who is building the future of hybrid work. And disclosure, also have angel invested in your company, Midstay. So excited to have you on the show to share, I think, your journey and what you've learned from around the world, and for you to introduce yourself right now.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for inviting. So, yeah, my name is Florian Jacques. I'm coming from Belgium, initially a UX UI designer, and very initially a football player that turned into the art field and then found a passion creating my career around building in Belgium, making sure that I was building a profession, a career where I was able to travel and work at the same time, which I always found it very important to actually connect with cultures and being inspired, which is one of the main things you actually looking after being a designer. So yeah, like been studying art in Brussels, dropped out after the third years of university, been having some opportunities to work in New York, then in San Francisco, then in Australia. For the last 5 years before COVID, I was traveling in all these countries, doing some mission for helping startups, and every year I was coming back in Belgium to organize this music festival that we brought up to 20,000 festival goers. So that's a bit about myself, learning by doing, and yeah, I would say that's pretty much about myself.
So could you share about how you first started becoming entrepreneurial? Was it with your music festival in Belgium?
Yeah, actually, at the very that was more because I was injured as a football player. And during that time, I took a year to think about what will bring me happiness and joy on a daily basis. And I think at this time, I also got like very attracted by all the game world. And by the fact of doing this, I actually lost a year and I dropped a year at school. My parents told me to not play anymore any game video because it was actually not good for my study. And I ended up keeping the connection with the people I was playing with as a game. I was creating some banners on YouTube. So that led me to this graphic career that I got interested about afterwards. So that's a bit where I started. I started to sell some of these artwork for others team that were actually were playing Call of Duty. So it's a pretty famous game. And yeah, like just to keep connected with the team I created around this game of Call of Duty, I kept the connection by creating other teams, and I already started to monetize this artwork. Afterwards, I've been very close to my parents that are both entrepreneurs. My father is into accounting and financials, and my mother, she's an interior architect. So I was born into this entrepreneurial mindset, I would say, and all the time trying to find ideas to bring it to the world. I've been helping my father building this music festival that was now 13 years ago. The first time we did it for 10 years. The last edition was in 2019, just before COVID. In that last edition, I took over the role of director. Brother that actually joined me. My father took a step back because he didn't push it as far as we wanted. And we brought that music festival from 2018, having 5,000 festival goers, to four times more in 2019, having 20,000 festival goers. So pretty interesting learning curve at this time. I had only 23 years old, managing over 50 managers during the whole year and 500 volunteers during the 3 days of music festivals, and learning a lot of different aspects of the entrepreneurial journey, and really from marketing to sign up to forecast to HR. That was interesting, and that learned me a lot.
Amazing. And you shared that, flexibility and being able to travel and work was something that was important to you from an early stage, right? So how did that interest, which is something that everybody has, right? Everybody wants to do a business travel and then tack on a few days of holiday, right? Everybody wants to take a holiday at the end of the year. How does that transition to being, kind of like a global nomad, and for you to, be able to have that lifestyle?
So yeah, that's a pretty good question. I think that all came up from the fact that I'm very passionate about connecting with people, and to me, this is where I got inspired. So it was super important from the very first day that I was really designing my life around a career where I was able to move and to travel and to work at the same time. This inspired me and to create what is now Midstay, but I also understood where were the free the why, like as you said, a lot of people are willing to jump into that new lifestyle that not possible mainstream of the remote pandemic. And I do believe that more and more are willing to do the jump, but there are, I think, some fear about, could be loneliness. How do I settle myself in a new place? How do I actually quit I have in my current life, or do I pause them to go into a life for a few months? So this is like really where we are trying to solve this issue, where a lot of people indeed are into that demand. They are willing to do it, but they are struggling to find it.
What was your personal experience struggling to, change and adapt to the new culture?
Yeah, fun fact actually. Like, we understood it even better once here in Bali. I met my co-founder Magnus, and for the little story, we are both surfer, and every morning from 6 to 8 a.m. we actually portraying that lifestyle of like getting out and making sure that we are having our mind completely free before starting the work, and surfing a few hours in the morning. So that day, that was a very flat day. We were together. At this time, we didn't know each other, but when you are at the peak and you're waiting for a wave, what's happening when there is no wave? You're speaking to the people around you. And I actually end up speaking with Magnus, who is now my co-founder. He was sharing with me his multiple destination he did as a digital nomad. And I was myself curious to know what was his pain by moving and traveling and working at the same time. Because myself, I was not really a digital nomad working from Chile to Thailand to Mexico. I was more working from corporate offices and providing services to startups that were in San Francisco, Australia. So I think in between 3 months to 6 months mission, but working and making myself out of that comfort zone that I created for a few months into that new hub to resettle myself and routine. So very interestingly, like the were the same, even though like the destination were different. So making yourself out of destination and moving from one place to the other, you will find all the time the same frictions, which are settling yourself again with some competency, knowing about your visa, your status, but as well the lifestyle. Because if you're moving from one place to the other, is to actually purchase a new lifestyle and improve and increase the work-life balance you're trying to reach. So this is one of the news we're mapping and we're trying to bring to the people. And as well, the social bubble you need to grow yourself as well, professionally or personally. And this is actually the most important. And that's actually what we see as an insight, is that most of the people are feeling lonely after a few weeks or months. And this is where we are bringing the most value, I believe, with Midstay.
So why do people feel lonely?
I do believe that because most of the destinations that people are choosing, which are dreamy locations, we're speaking about Belgium, currently operating, but as well Mexico, South Africa, Portugal, all interesting for people that would like to live there, but as well very interesting initially for tourists. So there's still this target that is coming and passing by. So most of the time, what's happening is that nomads, or call it, will actually connect with people, but then they will lose the connection after a few days because they go back in their own country and they are not in their same rhythm. And so that's clearly this journey, is that we connect these people together that are on the same page, and this is able to decrease the feeling of loneliness. Connecting with people, they're actually matching with people that are staying on the same length of stay.
So, what's interesting, of course, is that, it doesn't feel like the world is going to go full digital nomad, right? Which was something that some people were saying 2 years ago in the middle of the pandemic was, you know, let's all hang out in Bali. Because if I got to take a call from my dinky one studio apartment, I might as well do it from a new place. And, like you said, surf in the mornings in Bali, meet new people, and sure, a bit of loneliness, but everybody's lonely, right? Yet I think the world feels like, it's probably also not going to fully back to the office, right? It's a mixture of hybrid, right? I think most people are going to be spending 1, 2, 3 days and then a few more, days somewhere else, right? So how does that work out from your perspective? Do you think it'll be more digital nomads? How, or it'll be hybrid? Will people be taking long weekends? How does that future of work look like from a travel slash geography perspective?
I do agree with you. A few years ago, I would say, like fully in the pandemic, we would have bet that everyone will jump into that nomad lifestyle. I do also agree that there is not many go back fully at the office. So there is a few different ideas that are coming out of these new behaviors that we are basically understanding these years after pandemic, which are mainly most of the companies will be embracing the hybrid way of working. But this is also bringing different frictions and pain for the companies to keep up with the employee engagement, to company culture. And indeed, like I do believe younger generation like Gen Z and millennials will try longer trip because they are not stuck with a family or they are not stuck with a lot. They are more flexible, and at this time we are able to solve their pain and to bring them into a longer trip, I would say. But then indeed you have this full team like with different layers of in a company. So at this time, this is very interesting. This is a services we understood that is actually seeing quite a nice traction, and we are solving very good pain in the side of the company is that we're bringing the team together to make sure they are keeping up with the employee engagement by bring the team together into a team retreat, team of site, retreat, whatever we call it. This is basically a mix in between, I would say, a vacation, but this is very professional. So this is where we are seeing quite a nice value as well as an additional services of Midstay to serve as well this target.
And when you discuss all of that, I totally agree that I think it's a new generation, right? I think if you're like 35 and with family like me, I think you're out of the game, I think, because of the kids and everything. But I think for the next generation, I think it's going to be the norm. So how does that work out? Do you think, people are going to be spending like what, 1, 2, 3 weeks working remotely, then going back to the home office, and then, they spend 1, 2 months and then they head out for another few weeks? Is that, you see the world going that way?
What we are currently seeing with our data, and this is really not us assuming, it's really what we are seeing with the data we're gathering. Actually, people in between 25 to 35 are spending 69 days abroad by living abroad and by working at the same time abroad with our members. So this is like very interesting indeed. For sure, it's below 35. We are saying that this new Gen Z is willing to have a better flexibility, is willing to have a better work-life balance, is willing to invest into their compared to have a higher salary. So these are here, and most probably people that are basically in my generation, if I have to reflect myself, is because I've seen my parents being burnout and it's like really what happened to this generation coming up currently. They don't want to duplicate what they've seen from their parents, and they are willing to change and to bring working, and they see that no, it's possible. So they are willing to embrace that.
So it feels like nomad is a bit too hardcore, right? It's like the difference between people who like to camp and people who like to glamp, right? Glamorous camping, right? The difference being, one is you carry your backpack and all your food and water, and the other one is someone sets the tent up and brings you the water and the food, right? So tell me a little bit more about how you think about how that's going to work out. Yeah.
I do believe that there is a big cliche around the digital nomad wording. Firstly, this is something that we are not really using anymore to call it remote workers. Giving you a very small 55 years old, been joining me in Bali for a few months. He's a financial director and is not at all reflecting as a digital nomad. He will not be called nomad. He's seeing himself as a remote worker working from abroad. So this is the very first thing, is that I do believe that digital nomad was a term before, but now that many people are able to do it, digital nomad fashion, I would say, and this is not something we are, most of the people are not reflecting as a digital nomad anymore. Also, digital nomad, as we call it, most of the people are thinking that they are working from the beautiful beach with a coconut, and this is not really the case. We are seeing it all around us here in Bali. This is like so many interesting and inspiring professionals doing business and leading teams around the world. This is not at all the freelancers we used to have in mind before COVID. So I would say that's the very first take to keep in mind when we speak about this target, which is, to me, evolving a lot since the pandemic. Does it reply the question?
Yeah, no, amazing. And I really appreciate you saying that that's a trend that we're seeing, right? Like in the past, it used to be freelancers who were like engineers, growth hackers, marketers who were just freelancing on various marketplaces. But now I think we're seeing managers who are leading teams and so on and so forth. So, what are some
Indeed.
myths or misconceptions about kind of like being able to do this successfully?
Question as well. I think misconception is thinking digital nomads term are people working from tropical beach under palm trees. This is not at all what's happening. And like, very interestingly, if we take a step back, history about this new lifestyle of people at the same time. If we take the history that this lifestyle has been seeing, we are speaking in 2007, the very first pioneers, the one that were trying to find Wi-Fi in different dreamy locations, and they were really struggling. Then they were the one that we all know, that are the one marketers, freelancers, that were the one before COVID, and that appeared around 2014. And now there is this mainstream waves. Millions of people are trying at least this new lifestyle, and this it's very interesting. Like, I would never have considered or thought about having some friends being digital nomads, but being a lawyer and doing court errands from here. And this is currently happening. Like, it's not only business owners that are leading teams; it's also employee many corporates that are no corporates allowing this new lifestyle. Why? Because they need to retain their talents, and most of the talents are willing to thinking about a full year living like that, but at least having that kind of like jump out of their routine back to their own country, which is, I do believe, is linked a bit with the brave word, because you want to get out of your comfort zone once you do that, and you get inspired, and you actually meet so many people that you can maybe get opportunities with. So I do believe that this is also a big and interesting way of getting your comfort zone and thriving in different ways you would not have because you're just stuck in your routine back home.
You talk about how it's important for companies to retain talent. And I think it's interesting because I think there's a world where I totally agree that when you're looking for the best talent, you're just looking for them wherever they are, right? Whether that's Jakarta or Malaysia, Philippines. So all of those are new places to handle. Um, but it also feels like the world is, at least in the current bear market, it feels like, the power is with employers again, right? Which is that, people have to show up in the office, they have to give face time. They could work remotely, maybe from home in their country, but I think it's another thing to be saying like, oh, I'm out in, Phuket or anywhere in the world that's too far away from the home office. So I think which companies do you believe are the ones that will adopt hybrid more, and which type of companies would adopt it less?
I think the easy the tech companies, the one that were born during the COVID, that even did not never had any office in the past. This is the easy answer. I do believe that a lot of them will to more forward-thinking companies that will implement that. And to come back to what you were saying, recession, some companies are now having the upper hand, and employees need to come back at the office, even though it's to bring back all the employees back to the office. So I do. Another trend that we are currently seeing is that you laying off a few of your employees, but do you know about the fact that it's actually going to impact your internal? So you want to invest into this workforce you've been building, and you try to retain, because indeed you had to cut off some roles to maintain growth in your financials, but you most probably need as well to maintain the engine running, right? So this is very interesting to see as well, because even though, as you mentioned, we know that we are into that new, but this is where there is actually an interesting side as well, is that it's a completely new, fun way of working, and we're speaking a lot with HRs that are telling us we need to find new intangible ways to actually bring more engagement within our team. And this is where this is a switch from what we knew before. Before it was just stock options and big salaries. Now we're speaking about new intangible way. Why? Because there is inflation. Why? Because there is all this anxiety you got during the COVID, and you actually need to find new ways of bringing happiness within a company. So I do believe that everything you said is right, but there is also some different aspects that we sometimes forgot to mention, and this is where there is interesting angles to tackle.
I think one interesting thing, of course, is that I think there's a dynamic where, you know, I think all companies will have more flexibility. I agree. And then I think some companies will have more flexibility than others, like tech companies. I think one thing we are both seeing, of course, and we discussed this, is that more companies are doing offsites, right? So they're traveling more. I think historically, offsites were very boring things that were, at the corporate office, right? Or and then there'll be a nice dinner at a big restaurant in the home office, right? And I think now people working from the office less. So I think people are looking for this like flagship offsites and retreats, right? So they're in a new country, everybody flies out. What do you think about that trend?
I found that trend really interesting, and as you know, we've been finding some insights that actually companies are very interested in since a few months to actually plan that on in 2023. They that, and again, to come back to the layoff, like they are saying that they've been laying off a few people, but they need to keep that within the team, and they're losing it currently by allowing hybrid. And this is beautiful for the flexibility of the employee, but at the unity of the company, you're losing something, and you need to put in place some more initiatives. This unity you had before when the office, which we all know will not come back before. So indeed, these new projects for companies are very, and I do believe that there is a lot of things to explore still. We like to ask at the beginning, what's the goal of this offsite? And we really tailor-made any offsite based on the company size, but as well on the goal of the business. Either it's a social goal or either it's a business-related goal. We are seeing leadership summit. We are seeing annual planning. We are seeing strategy retreat, and this is all interesting because you can really combine the leisure and of bringing the team together to actually see some brainstorm happening and to bring the company forward or recharged. And that's something we've seen a lot.
Yeah, I think the answer is both, like you said, right? Which is that you can fire your low performers and you're trying to incentivize and make it a good experience for your higher performers that's still around. That being said, what do you think, from your perspective, makes a good offsite versus a terrible retreat?
That's a very good question. So I would say that bad retreats are the ones that where all like attendees or any attendees are actually sync with what's the goal of the retreat. I do think that's the very first thing. We like to start with a survey to also bring some democratic vote and knowing what everyone willing to have and what will bring them happiness and joy within this retreat, what will make that retreat a success for them. So in that way, it's not just a single mind organizing it. It's actually something that you feel as a collaborative project. So this is, to me, what makes a successful retreat. Otherwise, what's happening if you don't do that, and that's what brings a bad retreat, is that this is all all unorganized and on what's gonna be retreat, and this is, and at the end you don't have the outcome of what you are actually willing to see afterwards of this retreat, which we know what it is as a company. Bring the people together is recharging these people to make sure they are performing even better afterwards, and they are actually feeling part of than what they were thinking before. So meaning that they're actually as much as they can to bring that company to the next milestone.
100% agree. I think a great one is hard to achieve, and a bad one can easily happen if you don't have the logistics and everything all done well. On that note, when you think about all these travel and trends, what do you think is something that you think will happen that people don't really agree with you about? What's one thing about you believe about the world, regarding this future of work that is kind of crazy from your perspective? No, well, you think it makes sense from your perspective, but other people might think is a little crazy.
I do believe that more and more people will be traveling slowly and going into that life where you can work and travel. I do believe that currently there is a big obstacles, I would say, is that the fact is really friction. There is a lot of friction. It's really like all over the place, and you don't feel comfortable by doing it because you feel and you fear that you won't be as good. So that's really where we are. This mission that you get everything in one place. But about I believe that the Gen Z are gonna disrupt the whole way of working. They will be part of mainly of the workforce in a few years, and they are gonna disrupt the workspace for sure. They are already doing it, and they are raising their voice. And currently, that's where we it's like basically serve this new generation to bring more flexibility. Either it's abroad, either it's at home, but have a better flexibility of work, and they are willing to connect with like-minded remote workers because they feel lonely. And so that's where we are bringing that value for them, where they can really connect and leverage their companies hiring remotely, right? With some deal, these platforms that are allowing global hiring. But at the end, like, people are working from home. Either you need to bring back the team together as an offsite, or you're allowing a platform that allows them to keep growing professionally, even by not coming at the office every day. And so that's where we are to bring value into disrupt a bit. It's like basically bringing that workspace and as a feel as a workspace, a sense of a workspace, by connecting to the platform, and that you can also connect with people around you, because we are really speaking about real connection and not virtual one. We strongly believe about that face-to-face connection, which is necessary. It is super necessary, and you need to keep that happening aside of your virtual remote job.
I love what you said about slow nomad, slow mad.
The slow
Which
mad.
is we have to make new words all the time, right? Hybrid, nomad, slow mad.
Slow mad is getting quite a lot of attention lately. Why? Because there is this whole about the climate change, and this is very important. People want to know the biggest impact on traveling. that target of remote workers, adopting that slow mad lifestyle, which means that you are traveling very staying in a place a few months instead of staying a few days or a few weeks, which means that you're reducing your footprint and you're giving back to the local communities. And that is where it's very interesting, where basically you are able to bring your own knowledge as a Western or as another target, but you are able to share this knowledge with different culture. And that is where I do believe, and myself, I got inspired during my own traveling, I would say. This is where I grow myself the most. This is where I feel inspired the most. So I do believe more than a few days or a few weeks is bringing much more value than people think. And this is where you do create meaningful connections, local or either with people that are doing the same lifestyle as you are purchasing.
And on that note, could you share with us about a time that you personally have been brave?
So yeah, like I would say that's the time where I was dropping school, having this opportunity to go in New York, and at this time that was just an internship, so I was not earning any salary, but I always believe that it's only by doing that you're learning. So I prefer to this time, and I do believe that I did the right choice. And I skip school and I invest into my education by doing and by learning next to these founders that were, by the way, out of YC. So I do believe that this is where I've been brave, even by knowing internally I was doing the right choice. People around me were telling me like, Flo, what are you doing? Like you're not gonna have your diploma, you're not gonna get any certifications. But then at the end, who cares? Like as a UX UI designer, we never ask any certification to get hired. So I knew that, and deep internally, I knew that I was doing the right choice, even though my parents and my friends were telling me like, wow, Flo, like you're 20 years old and you're getting like out of Belgium to go to New York and then getting another gig in San Francisco and then what if this stopped? What are you gonna do? And hopefully this never stopped, and if it stopped, I was going to build my own thing, which I'm currently doing, and that was my end goal anyway, like being very close to these founders and making sure that I was, as a designer, as a digital designer, being able to translate their business ideas into visual experience and making sure the engineering team were able to implement it properly. By doing this all for a few years, I've been learning much I was going to learn at school, and I felt brave the very first weeks. After that, I knew that it was the right choice. So happy to have did this pass.
What's interesting, of course, is that you said something which is that you move to a city to be close to founders, right? And what's interesting is that I think the view, of course, is that if you're being a slow mad or hybrid or nomad, the thing is you're at your computer somewhere, right? And you're probably not in a hub. You're not close to the founders. You're not close to whoever that people, right? You're not, you said you were watching them and helping them and learning by being close to them. So how do you figure out that tension? Is it like, I actually just heard from, two different folks. One was a lawyer and one was, venture capitalist, right? And they felt like people, the next generation, Generation Z, wasn't learning because they weren't close to their bosses, they weren't close to their peers who were ahead of them, so they didn't feel like that proximity felt like it was something that was missing and therefore slowing their learning. So how do you reconcile that point of view?
I completely agree. This is very contradictory. Like myself, I would doing it again in San Francisco as I did it before. After COVID, I think I would not have done it. But I'm very happy I did it before COVID. The thing is that I do understand and I do agree with you the fact that Gen Z are losing and are missing their mentor, clearly. What I think as well is that there is no a lot of tools that are allowing you to do remotely, but it's not the same. I agree as well. The thing is that that's also what we're trying to solve, right? We know that there is this big pain of, we can't call it loneliness, also like basically growing professionally. And this is like very important as early as we are, as young as we are. When we start, it's super important to have some people that inspired us to make to the next milestone. I had my people that inspired me back in San Francisco, and I think I wonder how I would have done without that. What we're trying to do with Midstay, as we know that this is kind of like we're losing track of that, we're trying to connect these people together while they're moving. So as they are moving to different hubs, like speaking about different islands, there's still some people around you, but you don't have the tool to actually connect with them currently. And so this is currently what we're doing with a platform of remote workers we're building in place, this community where you can find another CTO or another been working in Amazon for like 9 years, and you see that he's actually 2 streets away, and that you can connect with him. So this is really something that we try to leverage, because we do feel that there is this missing into like connecting with people that can bring you some interesting professional insights where you can actually learn from it. And again, like I think that I've been driven all the time by this quote by Confucius saying that you learning by doing, and you actually need to find a job that you like to make sure that you're not gonna work any time of your life because you don't. But again, this is something that if you purchase that, you still need to have the very first element, which is like learning by the people around you that you surround yourself. And so this is to me like the missing part, and that's where we're trying to solve it by having some tools that allows people to connect each other, not virtually, but face to face in real.
When you think about rebuilding, mentorship, right? By founders, by community, by peers, what would you say are some of the, challenges that people should be aware of?
I think like the main blockers to leverage the skills and to connect with people that are able to mentor yourself and to make you grow professionally is the fact that people tend to connect with people that are speaking the same languages. You probably hear it. I have this French, very close to this French community, and this is in every community of nationalities. They're tending all the time to connect with people speaking the same language. This is completely understandable, right? You're feeling more comfortable, you're feeling more safe by being with people that are speaking the same languages. But I do believe this is the main blocker to actually leverage your opportunity to actually connect with people that can bring you insights within your own domain, right? In all fields, because obviously especially in your fields of expertise. So I do believe that there is this main blocker, and that's also what we're trying to actually bypass by telling to the people, look, you can also feel comfortable by being people that are in your same field, and not only with the people that are speaking the same languages. This is really where it feels the more obvious, because for sure you hear them and it's easier to connect. But look, now we're trying another way, and we're seeing that currently it's happening quite well, where people are looking for other like-minded remote workers around their temporary home address, where they can actually get a meetup, get a coffee, real coffee this time, and brainstorming around topics that they are expert about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Florian. I'd love to summarize the three big themes before wrapping up. So first of all, thank you so much for, I think, that point of view on hybrid versus nomad, right? Versus, I guess, slow mad, which is, the trends about how people are seeing the future of work and how they want to do things in life. And I think there's some interesting dynamics around the Gen Z dynamics as well. The second is I love what you shared about surfing Bali mornings and thinking about what you need to do, because those are great opportunities, for example, for you to meet your own co-founder, but also I think is a great visual and mental image for how most people see the future of work. And lastly, thank you so much for sharing about what are the biggest challenges for founders today, which is that you build your career by having great mentors and learning by emulating and watching other founders build and helping them with that. And I think the remote work is still lacking. And I think it's really interesting for you to acknowledge that, but also have made it the mission to rebuild this at a community level. So thank you so much for coming on the Brave Show.
Thanks, Jeremy. It was a great talking with you.